Caleb Foster was the kind of man who never put himself in situations he couldn't explain. That was not paranoia. That was math. He had run the numbers on his own life, long enough to know that a black man in a mid-level corporate job, raising a 9-year-old daughter alone, operating in rooms where he was usually the only one who looked like him, that man did not get the benefit of the doubt. He got the benefit of nothing. So he kept his record clean, his behavior above reproach, his distance from anything that could be misread. He did not drink at company events. He did not linger after hours. He did not give anyone a story to tell about him that he had not approved first. He had one rule above all the others: never let yourself be in the wrong place at the wrong time. On the night of November 14th, he broke that rule for someone who would nearly destroy him for it. The ballroom of the Hargrove Hotel smelled like open bars and new money. Meridian Group's annual charity gala drew 230 people in suits and cocktail dresses, and Caleb Foster stood near the far edge of the room in his only good blazer, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching the clock on his phone with the focused patience of a man who had somewhere better to be. Somewhere better. The Lincoln Elementary School auditorium, 12 minutes away by surface streets. Third row from the front, center seat. His daughter Maya had taped a sticky note to his bathroom mirror 4 days ago that read, "Dad, front row. Don't be late. I can see everything from up there." She had underlined everything twice. Maya was 9 years old and had inherited her mother's voice, clear and high and steady in a way that made people stop what they were doing and listen without knowing why. Tonight was her first choral performance. She had been practicing for 6 weeks. She had made him listen to her run through the same song every night at dinner, and every night he had told her it was perfect, and every night she had shaken her head and said she needed to do it one more time. He had promised her the front row. He had promised her he would record every second. He checked the time again. 7:14. He needed to leave by 7:30 to make it with time to spare. He had already done the mental calculation 3 times. Traffic on Meridian Avenue was lighter on Thursdays. Parking at Lincoln took 4 minutes if he used the side lot. The auditorium doors opened at 7:50. He had margin, not much, but enough. He set his sparkling water down on a passing tray, straightened his blazer, and began working his way toward the exit through the slow drift of conversation and laughter. He took the hallway behind the main ballroom, quieter, shorter, lined with tall decorative planters and soft overhead lighting. It was the route the staff used. Caleb had found it 20 minutes ago during a trip to the restroom and filed it away as the fastest path out. He was halfway down the hall when he saw her. Diane Holloway was sitting on the floor, not leaning against the wall in the practiced way of someone taking a break. Sitting fully down, legs bent at odd angles, one heel of her shoe catching the baseboard. Her structured evening bag collapsed open on the tile beside her. Her head was tipped back slightly, eyes half open. The sharp precision she wore in every Monday morning meeting dissolved entirely. She was 44 years old and the director of analytics at Meridian Group, which made her Caleb's direct supervisor, which meant Caleb saw her in high-pressure situations regularly and had never once seen her look like this. A man was crouched beside her. Caleb recognized him, Greg Paulson, from the sales division, 3rd floor. Greg was smiling in a way that had nothing friendly in it. His hand rested near Diane's knee, and his voice was low, the kind of low that was meant to not carry. Caleb walked toward them without breaking stride. "Greg," he said it the way you say a word to fill a space, not loud, not aggressive, just present. Unavoidable. Greg looked up. His smile shifted into something else, something that tried to look casual and didn't quite make it. He stood, straightened his jacket, and offered the corridor a short laugh. "Just making sure she's all right." He looked at Caleb for 1 beat longer than necessary. Then he walked away. Caleb crouched down where Greg had been. Diane's eyes tracked to him slowly. She registered his face with the effortful recognition of someone working through fog. "Foster," she said. The word came out slightly rounded at the edges. "Yes, ma'am. I'm fine." "Okay." He did not move. She shifted, tried to straighten up, and her shoulder drifted sideways against the wall. Her phone lay dark beside her bag, screen black, powered off or dead. He looked down the hallway, both directions. The gala noise continued its muffled roar behind the ballroom doors. Not one person had slowed down. Not one face appeared in the corridor doorway to check. Caleb stayed crouched and ran the calculation he had hoped he would never have to run. A black man removing an incapacitated white woman from a corporate event. That was the image. That was what it would look like on a security camera, in a text message, in a sentence spoken in an HR office. He knew what assumptions lived inside that image without anyone having to speak them. He had known since he was 22 years old and had learned to navigate around those assumptions the way you navigate around standing water carefully, consistently, without complaint. Every instinct he had built over 17 years in professional spaces told him to find someone else, to go back into the ballroom and locate a female colleague, a manager, anyone who could be the person to handle this. To protect himself the way he had always protected himself, by staying clean, staying out of it. He pulled out his phone. He looked at Maya's last text, a string of music notes and a single star. Then he looked at Diane Holloway sitting on the floor of a hotel hallway while the man who had been crouching beside her walked back toward the open bar. He opened his texts and typed, "Maya, I am so sorry, baby. Someone needs help tonight. I will make the next one. I love you more than anything." He sent it before he could think about it too long. Then he put his phone away, picked up Diane's bag, and said, "Miss Holloway, I'm going to help you to a car. Can you stand?" It took 3 attempts, one arm around her back, and the steadying weight of the decorative planter she gripped for leverage before Diane Holloway was on her feet. Caleb kept his hands visible and his movements deliberate, not out of performance, but because it was the only thing he could control. He tried her phone first. Dead battery. He tried calling her emergency contacts from his own phone. Only her office line was in the company directory, useless at this hour. He stood outside the hotel entrance for 6 minutes, trying every reasonable option. The concierge, who suggested calling a rideshare to an address Diane could not clearly provide. 2 female colleagues from Meridian he spotted near the valet, who expressed sympathy and then said they had their own rides and couldn't really, their voices trailing off in the way of people who had already decided. He considered the hospital and weighed it against what that would mean for her in the morning. In the custody case, he knew even less about. He had no good options. He had one option that was less bad than the others. "I'm taking you to my house," he said. "My daughter is home. You'll sleep on the couch. There will be a note explaining everything when you wake up. In the morning, I'll drive you wherever you need to go." He said it clearly and slowly, the way you say something to someone you want to be able to repeat back accurately. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Diane looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Okay, Foster," and let him walk her to his car. He lived 23 minutes from the Hargrove Hotel in a 2-bedroom house on Clement Street, with a small front yard. Maya had planted marigolds in last spring. The marigolds were still alive. He considered this an ongoing victory. Maya had already texted back by the time he pulled into the driveway. "It's okay, Dad. Mrs. Patterson recorded it for you. Be safe." He sat in the car for a moment after reading it, in the dark, with the engine off, and did not allow himself to feel what that sentence cost him. He got Diane inside, got her settled on the couch, with the care of someone moving something fragile. He found a spare blanket in the hall closet, the heavy gray one Maya used on movie nights. He set a glass of water and 2 ibuprofen tablets on the coffee table within easy reach. He found a set of athletic clothes his sister had left behind after her last visit folded in the guest drawer, clean, and placed them on the armrest of the couch in case Diane wanted to change out of her gala dress, which had taken on the particular condition of a dress that had had a very bad evening. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and wrote the note by hand. "Miss Holloway, my name is Caleb Foster. We worked together at Meridian. You became ill at the gala tonight, and there was no safe way to reach your home or contacts. I brought you here because I did not feel right leaving you. Nothing happened. You slept on the couch. I slept on the floor in the living room. Your phone is charging on the side table. Water and ibuprofen are on the coffee table. My number is below. Call me when you're ready, and I will drive you home. I am sorry for the circumstances. Caleb Foster." He folded it and set it on top of the ibuprofen. He found his own blanket, laid it out on the hardwood floor of the living room, 6 feet from the couch, and lay down on his back in the dark. Through the wall, he could hear the small sleeping sounds of Maya's room, the faint shift of her turning over, the hum of her white noise machine. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. He had done everything right. He had documented everything. He had left the note. He had kept his hands where they needed to be. He had the note. He had the floor. He had done what a decent man does. He closed his eyes. The first thing Diane Holloway registered when she opened her eyes was light, not gentle morning light. The particular aggressive brightness of a room she did not recognize, coming through curtains she had never seen before. Falling across a coffee table that was not hers, beside a couch she had apparently spent the night on. She sat up too fast. The room tilted. She pressed the heel of her hand against her temple and waited for the tilting to stop. And while she waited, she took inventory of what she knew. She was wearing a gray athletic set that did not belong to her. Her gala dress was folded over the arm of the couch. Her shoes were placed neatly beside the couch leg. Her bag sat upright on the floor, closed. Her phone was on the side table, fully charged, screen lit with notifications. 12 missed calls from Sandra Cole. One text from Sandra, sent at 6:47 in the morning. Diane, call me the second you see this. I mean it. Diane picked up the phone. Her thumb hovered over Sandra's name. On the coffee table in front of her, she registered, peripherally, a folded piece of paper sitting on top of 2 white tablets, but the phone was already in her hand, and Sandra was already calling again, the screen flashing, and Diane answered it without reading the note first. Where are you? Sandra's voice was controlled in the way of someone who had been managing their own alarm for several hours. Diane looked around the room again. Small living room, modest furniture, clean but lived in, a child's drawing taped to the wall near the hallway. I'm in someone's house. I don't entirely remember leaving the hotel. Whose house? Diane saw the name on the folded note. She had not read it yet, but the name was written on the outside. Foster. Caleb Foster. He works in my department. 3 seconds of silence on Sandra's end. Then, Diane, listen to me very carefully. You woke up in a subordinate's home, in his clothes, and you don't remember how you got there. I don't remember the details, but that is not a situation. That is a crisis. Sandra's voice was the one she used in depositions, flat, fast, designed to close down alternatives. Marcus is already building a case that you're an unstable parent. If his attorneys find out you spent the night in some man's house after a company event, Sandra, I need to read. Diane reached for the note. Do not engage with him before we understand what happened. Do you hear me? Don't talk to him. Don't thank him. Don't give him anything he can use as an acknowledgement. I'm sending an email to HR at Meridian right now flagging a potential workplace incident. We get ahead of it. We protect you. Sandra. But Sandra had already moved on, already shifted into the efficient forward motion that had won her 4 custody cases in the past 2 years, and Diane could hear the sound of typing through the phone. It's done, Sandra said. The call ended. Diane sat on the couch with the phone in both hands. The note was still folded in front of her. She picked it up. She unfolded it. She read it once. Then, she read it again. Nothing happened. You slept on the couch. I slept on the floor in the living room. She looked at the floor. There was an indentation in the area rug, a slight compression in the fibers where a blanket had been laid and then folded back. She looked at the armrest where her folded dress rested. She looked at the glass of water that had been placed within easy reach. She looked at her phone, which someone had plugged in and charged to 100% while she slept. She was still looking at all of it when a door opened down the hallway. Maya Foster came out of her bedroom, the way 9-year-olds emerge in the morning, gradually, in stages, sleep still organizing itself behind her eyes. She was wearing pajamas printed with small yellow stars. Her hair was in 2 braids that had survived the night mostly intact. She walked into the living room, registered the presence of a stranger on the couch, and stopped. She studied Diane, with the frank, unhurried appraisal of a child who had not yet learned to pretend she wasn't looking. You're the sick lady, Maya said finally. Not unkindly, just as a statement of established fact. Ah, yes. Diane blinked. I suppose I am. Dad said you needed help. Maya moved to the armchair across from the couch and folded herself into it with the ease of a person claiming their usual seat. Are you feeling better? A little. Yes, thank you. There's bread if you want toast. Dad bought the kind with the seeds. I don't like it, but he says it's good for you. Maya paused. Are you hungry? I'm okay. Maya accepted this. She pulled one knee up to her chest and looked at Diane with an expression that was thinking something through. Then she said, he missed my show last night. The words were simple, delivered without accusation, without theater. They were just true, and Maya said them the way you say true things. He texted me before it started, Maya continued. He said someone needed help. He said he was sorry. She adjusted her knee. He's always sorry when he misses things. He tries really hard not to miss things. A brief pause. Mrs. Patterson recorded it so he could watch. She does that. Diane said nothing. There was nothing adequate to say. He says sometimes grown-ups need help more than kids do, Maya added, with the careful tone of someone quoting something they had thought about since it was said. I didn't really get it when I was little. I kind of get it now. She was 9 years old. Diane did not know what to do with that. I'll make you some tea, Maya announced, and unfolded herself from the armchair with great authority and disappeared into the kitchen before Diane could respond. Diane stood slowly and moved through the living room. On the wall beside the hallway hung a framed photograph of Caleb, Maya, and a woman who was clearly Maya's mother. The woman was laughing, head tilted back, hand raised toward the camera, as if trying to stop it from taking the picture, and laughing at the same time. Maya was maybe 5 years old in it, sitting on the woman's lap, also laughing. Caleb had his arm around them both, and was not quite laughing. He was smiling in the way of someone watching something so good, it almost hurt to look at directly. The woman was gone. Diane had heard it mentioned once, briefly, in the context of a workplace benefit form. Foster's emergency contact is his mother. His wife passed a few years back. She had registered it as information and moved on. Standing in this living room, looking at that photograph, she registered it differently. Maya's weekly schedule was held up on the refrigerator by a magnet shaped like a fish, piano, on Tuesdays. Reading group Wednesdays. Choir practice every Thursday. At the bottom of the schedule, in a different pen, Caleb's handwriting, she recognized the slant from his reports, a note to himself. Pack snack. Pick up at 4:30. Do not be late. A pair of small sneakers sat beside the front door, laces still tied from the last time they'd been taken off, placed neatly against the baseboard like someone had been taught to leave them there. A medical bill was clipped under a coffee mug on the kitchen counter, the hospital logo visible from the doorway, and on the living room floor, folded at the foot of the couch, the blanket Caleb had slept under, still holding the shape of a person. Diane stood in the middle of the room for a long time. She had spent the last 4 months building a legal argument for why she was a fit mother, organized, attentive, present, capable of putting her child first. She had crafted the case carefully, word by word, because she knew what was at stake, and she knew how quickly a narrative could be turned against you if someone else got to write it first. She understood, standing there, with terrible and specific clarity, exactly what she had just done to Caleb Foster. She was reaching for the note again when she heard his voice, low, controlled, coming from the kitchen where he had apparently woken while Maya was making tea. She heard him say, "Maya, go back to your room for a few minutes, please." She heard Maya say, "But the tea. I'll finish it. Go on, bug." And then she heard the sound that stopped her completely. His phone. A notification. And then his voice, quieter now, reading something, and the silence that followed had a specific weight, the kind that falls when someone has just read something that changes the shape of their morning. Diane walked to the kitchen doorway. Caleb was standing at the counter with his phone in his hand. He was still in the clothes he'd slept, in a plain white t-shirt, dark sweatpants, bare feet on the kitchen tile. He was reading something on the screen with the careful stillness of a man absorbing information he needs to understand fully before he reacts to it. He looked up. He saw her standing in the doorway. Neither of them spoke. He turned the phone around so she could read the screen. "Mr. Foster, please remain at your current address and make yourself available for a verification call from Human Resources within the next 2 hours regarding a reported workplace incident. Do not contact any Meridian employees about this matter until you have spoken with HR. Thank you." Diane read it. She read it a second time. From the back of the apartment, the small sound of Maya's door clicking softly shut. Caleb set his phone face down on the counter. He looked at Diane in the way of someone who has decided not to say what they are thinking, not out of politeness, but out of a discipline so deeply practiced it had become structural. He was not angry in any way she could identify. He was something worse than angry. He was utterly, quietly unsurprised. And that more than anything else that morning, more than the note, more than the photograph, more than Maya's voice, saying he misses things and he's always sorry, that was the thing that broke something open in Diane Holloway's chest. She had a note in her hand that explained everything. She had a floor with an indent in the carpet. She had a fully charged phone and 2 ibuprofen and a folded dress on an armrest and a man standing in his kitchen in bare feet who had spent the night on the floor to make sure she was safe. And she had sent an email. "I need to call Sandra," she said. Her voice came out steady. "I need to call her right now." Caleb looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded once, a single, measured motion, and turned back to the counter and began, very slowly, finishing the tea his daughter had started. The HR call came at 9:17 in the morning. Caleb sat at the kitchen table with his phone on speaker and his hands flat on the table in front of him. Maya was in her room with the door closed. Diane had stepped out to the front porch to make her own calls. The house was quiet in the particular way of a place where too many things were happening at once and none of them were making noise. The HR representative's name was Brenda Walsh. She had a careful voice, the professional kind, trained to be neutral in a way that gave nothing away and implied everything. "Mr. Foster, I want to be clear that this is a preliminary conversation," Brenda said. "Nothing has been determined. We're simply gathering information." "I understand," Caleb said. "Can you walk me through the events of last evening, starting from when you first made contact with Miss Holloway?" He walked her through it. He was precise. He said the hallway, the time, what he saw, what Greg Paulson had been doing, why he had intervened. He said he had attempted to locate alternative arrangements for 40 minutes before making the decision to bring her to his home. He said he had written a note. He said he had slept on the floor. He said her dress was folded on the armrest and her phone was charging and the ibuprofen was on the table. Brenda Walsh listened. She asked 3 clarifying questions, each one worded carefully enough that Caleb could hear the shape of the concern underneath, the same concern visible in the framing of the text message, in the word incident. He answered each question the same way he had answered the first one, precisely, without embellishment, without defensiveness. Because defensiveness was the thing that looked like guilt even when it wasn't. "Mr. Foster," Brenda said. After a pause that lasted slightly too long, given the nature of the allegation, and the fact that Miss Holloway has not yet provided her account, we're going to need to place you on a brief administrative leave while we— "I understand," Caleb said. He said it before she finished the sentence. Not because he agreed. Because he had learned, over a long career in rooms where he was often the only one who looked like him, that there were moments when completing a sentence yourself was the only way to keep your voice from doing something you would regret. He ended the call. He set the phone down on the table. He sat very still. Through the wall, he could hear Maya moving around in her room, the quiet shuffle of socked feet, the small thud of a book being set down, the low absent hum she did when she was reading, a habit she had carried since she was small. He had never been able to figure out where she had learned it. It had simply always been there, the way certain things simply are. He thought about that now, sitting at the kitchen table with his phone face down and his hands flat on the wood. He had done every single thing right. He had weighed the risk and accepted it because leaving was worse. He had documented and protected and kept his hands where they needed to be. He had written the note. He had slept on the floor. He had done what a decent person does, and now he was on administrative leave and there was a formal complaint in an HR file with his name on it. And if this became a legal matter, if the word incident became something with more teeth, then there would be a record. And records had a way of following people. And people who followed records had a way of deciding things. And one of the things they could decide was whether a man with a record was a suitable environment for a 9-year-old girl to grow up in. He pressed both palms harder against the table. He heard Maya's door open. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her star pajamas, one braid slightly looser than the other, her book held in one hand, with her thumb marking the page. She looked at him the way she had been looking at him lately, when something was wrong with a kind of careful, sideways attention, like she was trying to see the thing he wasn't saying without making him feel seen. She was 9 years old, and she had learned that skill before most adults did. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, Bug, is everything okay?" He looked at her. He assembled something in the vicinity of a reassuring expression and placed it on his face with the precision of a man who had been doing this for 3 years. "Everything's fine," he said. "Just work stuff." Maya looked at him for a moment with those eyes that saw sideways. Then she said, quietly, "Are you going to get in trouble because of the lady?" Something shifted in his chest with an almost physical sensation, like a building adjusting to a tremor. "No," he said. "No, I'm not." He said it the way you say something true that you're not yet sure is true. The way you say it to your child because your child needs to hear it, and because saying it is the only way to make yourself believe it long enough to figure out how to make it actually happen. Maya nodded. She still didn't look entirely convinced. "Okay," she said. Then she went to the refrigerator, took out the orange juice, and poured herself a glass with the deliberate carefulness of someone who had been told many times not to spill. She poured a second glass and set it in front of him without comment. Then she went back to her room. Caleb looked at the orange juice for a moment. Then he picked it up and drank. On the front porch, Diane Holloway was having the most important argument of the last 4 months with the woman who had been protecting her through all of them, Sandra. Her voice was controlled. She was standing at the edge of the porch, one hand on the railing, looking at the marigolds in the front yard. Someone had planted them carefully staggered spacing, consistent depth. A person who read the instructions on the seed packet. "You need to retract the email." "Diane, I read the note, Sandra. I read every word of it. I looked at the floor where he slept. I looked at my phone, which he charged. I looked at my dress, which he folded." A pause. "His daughter made me tea. That doesn't mean. There's a little girl in this house who told me her father missed her first choir performance last night because he was helping me." Diane's voice didn't waver, but something inside it compressed, tightened to a point. He didn't tell her to say that. She just said it. "Because it's true. Diane, I understand this feels. I'm not calling you because it feels like something. I'm calling you because I know exactly what I'm asking you to do, and I'm asking you to do it." She turned away from the marigolds. "Retract the email, right now, before this goes any further." Silence on Sandra's end. The particular silence of a lawyer recalculating. "If I retract without explanation, it flags the original. Then explain it. Tell them it was sent based on incomplete information and does not reflect the actual account of the named party." Diane's voice was even, clear, and final. "Tell them exactly that." Another silence. Then Sandra said, carefully, "This could affect the custody case. If Marcus's attorneys find any documentation of an incident." There was no incident. Each word its own sentence. "There was a man who helped me when no one else would. And if I let what you sent stand, then I am using the most dangerous assumption in this country as a weapon against someone who did nothing wrong. I will not do that." A breath. "And frankly, Sandra, if my case for being a good mother requires me to do that, then we need to rebuild the case." The silence this time was different, longer. Sandra Cole had been practicing family law for 19 years and had a particular quality of stillness. When she encountered an argument, she could not counter. "All right," she said finally. "I'll retract it." "Thank you." Diane paused. "And Sandra, I know you were trying to protect me. I know that." She hung up. She stood on the porch for a moment in the cool morning air. Then she squared her shoulders and went back inside. She found Caleb still at the kitchen table. He looked up when she came in. His face was arranged into the careful neutrality she recognized from 100 meetings, the expression of a man who had learned to keep his reactions internal and present only what was useful. It was, she realized, a form of self-protection so practiced it had become invisible. She had never thought to look for it before. "I called Sandra," she said. "She's retracting the email." She remained standing in the kitchen doorway, because sitting down would have made this feel like a conversation that required comfort, and this was not that kind of conversation. "I'm going to call HR directly after this. I'll tell them everything what happened at the hotel, the note, all of it." I'm going to ask them to pull the security footage from the Hargrove hallway. Caleb looked at her steadily. He didn't say anything. I know that doesn't undo what was already sent, she said. I know there's a file somewhere with your name on it, and I know what that can mean. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it's closed cleanly. She paused. I should have read the note before I picked up the phone. That's on me, not Sandra. Me. The kitchen was quiet. From Maya's room, the faint sound of that low, absent humming. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the same calibrated evenness it always did, except that now she could hear, underneath it, the cost of that calibration. Why didn't you? He asked. A genuine question, no accusation, just the specific curiosity of a person trying to understand the exact mechanism of how something went wrong. Diane thought about it honestly. Because I woke up scared, she said. And when Sandra called, I was still scared. And scared and Sandra together produce a very specific kind of tunnel vision. She looked at him. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation. There's a difference. Caleb considered this. Yeah, he said. There is. Neither of them spoke for a moment. I heard what you told, HR, Diane said. I was on the porch. I could hear enough. She paused. You told them about Greg Paulson. I told them what I saw. They'll talk to him. I know. She nodded. Good. A beat. For what it's worth, what you described, what he was doing. That's the version of this evening I needed protecting from. Not you. Caleb looked at her for a moment. Then he said, quietly, I know. 2 words. Carrying the weight of every calculation he had run in that hallway, every risk he had accepted, and every cost he had agreed to pay in the 40 seconds it had taken him to decide to stay. Diane nodded. She had nothing adequate to add to that, so she didn't try. The Hargrove Hotel security footage arrived at Meridian HR the following Tuesday, requested formally by Diane and released by the hotel within 24 hours. The footage showed 4 minutes and 38 seconds of hallway camera time. It showed Caleb walking toward Diane with the purposeful stride of someone who had noticed something wrong. It showed Greg Paulson standing, straightening his jacket, walking away. It showed Caleb crouching where Greg had been, hands visible, posture open, no contact beyond a steadying arm when Diane tried to stand. It showed him on his phone, repeatedly, trying numbers that weren't answering. It showed him guiding her toward the exit with the care of someone moving something they were responsible for, not possessively, not in the way of someone taking, but in the way of someone carrying. There was nothing on that footage that required explanation. Brenda Walsh called Caleb that same afternoon. The administrative leave was lifted. The file was being closed. A formal note of correction would be added to any record of the original complaint. Greg Paulson, she added in a tone that indicated she had said enough, was being addressed separately. We appreciate your patience, Mr. Foster, Brenda said. Caleb sat for a moment after the call ended. He looked out the kitchen window at the backyard, the small square of grass, the lawn chair Maya had claimed as her reading spot, the late afternoon light going gold across the fence. He stayed there long enough to let the day reorganize itself around the news. Then he got up, took the ground beef out of the refrigerator, and started on the mac and cheese he had promised his daughter. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday evening in December, Lincoln Elementary School held its second choral performance of the year. Caleb arrived 18 minutes early. He took the center seat in the 3rd row, not the front row, because Maya had revised her instructions since November and now believed the 3rd row offered superior acoustics, a theory she had explained to him with great seriousness over dinner and which he had agreed with in full. He had his phone ready, camera already open, volume silenced. He had packed a snack for the drive home. He had not been late. He had not missed anything. When the choir filed in, Maya found him immediately the way she always found him, the specific radar of a child who has learned to locate her person in a crowd. She was wearing the white shirt. Her braids were neat. She took her position in the 2nd row of the risers and stood up straight in the way of someone who had practiced standing up straight. She found his face. She smiled, not the big performative smile of a child waving at a parent, but the small, private one, the one that said, "You're here, and I see you, and that's everything," compressed into the corners of her mouth. He smiled back. The choir director raised her hands. At the back of the auditorium, near the doors, Diane Holloway stood alone. She had not told Caleb she was coming. She had not asked permission, and she had not announced herself, because this was not something she was doing for him to witness. She was here because there are certain debts that have no currency, no transaction that settles them, no words that close the account. There is only showing up to the thing you helped put at risk, and standing in the back quietly and letting the fact of it exist. She watched the choir director raise her hands. She watched Maya Foster stand in the second row of the risers with her back straight and her chin up and her whole self focused forward, with the intensity of a child who had been practicing for 6 weeks and knew every word and was ready. She watched Caleb in the third row, his phone raised, steady, recording every second. The music started. Maya's voice rose with the others, and then, in the second verse, it rose above them slightly, not aggressively, not performing, just present, in the way that a clear thing is present when it is surrounded by other things that are only pretty good. The woman next to Diane shifted in her seat. A man in the row ahead leaned slightly toward his wife. Caleb did not move at all. He held his phone steady and watched his daughter sing. Diane stood at the back of the auditorium with her hands folded in front of her and felt the specific sensation of a person who has narrowly not done something they could not have come back from. It was not relief exactly. It was the feeling of standing at the edge of something you had not realized was an edge until you were already very close to it, and taking one step back and then standing still for a long time afterward, understanding where you were. She did not stay for the reception. She slipped out before the final applause had finished, back through the double doors and into the cold December air. She stood on the sidewalk outside Lincoln Elementary for a moment with her hands in her coat pockets, looking up at the dark. She took out her phone and texted her son, "Thinking about you tonight, buddy. Sleep tight. Mom loves you to the end of everything." Then she walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and breathed. Inside the auditorium, the reception was loud and warm and smelled like punch and sugar cookies. Maya had found the chocolate chip cookies and was delivering a verdict on them to her father with the seriousness of a food critic filing a review. 7 out of 10, she said. "The chips are good, but the dough is a little dry." 7 out of 10 is pretty good, Caleb said. "It's not 10 out of 10. Nothing is 10 out of 10, Maya." She considered this philosophically. "Your mac and cheese is 10 out of 10. Thank you. I want it for dinner tomorrow. I'll see what I can do." She finished the cookie, looked up at him, and said with the directness that was entirely her own, "You got it all on video?" "Every second." She nodded. This was satisfactory. She reached over without looking and took his hand, not the way a child takes a hand when she's scared or needs steadying, but in the easy, absent way of someone reaching for something that is simply reliably there. Caleb held his daughter's hand in the warm, loud room and let the evening be what it was. Not the evening he had almost lost. Not the demonstration of what could have been taken. Just Thursday. Just December. Just Maya. 7 out of 10 cookies. And every second on video. Just this.